So one thing that's happened to society, to Gen Zs, and also everyone that's followed, is the hookup culture. And now it's not to say in the 80s, we didn't have some form of the hookup culture, right? I mean, it's not that people weren't sleeping around. It was the AIDS crisis. Yep. It was heterosexual. It was gay. It was everything, right? But it's gotten much worse.
Welcome to Manosphere Highlights Daily, where we call out feminist foolishness, expose women's hypocrisy, dismantle double standards, and stand up for men. Shout out to Dad Saves America for today's video. He brought on psychoanalyst Erica Komisar, and the convo took a turn we just had to highlight. Let's jump in.
Now it's time for us to get into this and do what we gotta do, because we men, ain't we? We men, ain't we?
You have boys, and this is your work. One of the things that I found myself with my son, and he's doing pretty well. He's got a girlfriend, he's at school, it's his freshman year, so he's struggling a little bit, but that's okay. I found myself in a very weird spot as a father, and which was, he had girls he liked, who liked him. Mm-hmm. And I found myself saying, well, you have to make the first move. If you want, you're going to be in the friend zone. And I'm saying these things that are like, probably just like, now they're like cringe dad sayings from a former time, the friend zone. But the response I would get from him is that you don't understand. Like, I can't just do that. I can't just make the move. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm asking myself, am I encouraging my son to do things that will get him in trouble? Like, make the first move? Like, well, you're having a great time and you're with a girl. You there's something where you will know. You can grab her and kiss her. like you're at the movies and you make moves. And there's this reticence that I don't know as a father how to guide in our times, how to give good advice that's going to work, that's going to be helpful, and that isn't setting them up to be perceived as excessively aggressive. And it was really very difficult. What's your advice for that? Because I gotta imagine you're encountering this, even with your sons.
Now, this is a great question, and this is what we want you to understand when you watch our videos. Men have always adapted to their environment to survive. That's why men talk to other men. It's why they share stories, lessons, and strategies to navigate the terrain. So when you hear BS like this...
She said the men she dated got all their news and information from the so-called Manosphere.
They did not listen to anything else. They're only listening to independent media, and they're only listening to men talking to men.
The reason is simple. Men turn to each other because men tell the truth. They're not going to sugarcoat. They're not going to pretend all women are sugar and spice and everything nice. And that real talk leads to a certain mindset, which, funny enough, even this female psychoanalyst ends up backing up.
You have to have good radar as a boy that you stay away from paranoid, persecuted girls. There's a lot of girls out there who are not mentally well. There's a lot of boys now who are not mentally well. I mean, that's what I run around the world talking about, how we're dealing with a mental illness crisis in adolescents, right? And children. But you have to have a good sense. And where do you learn that sense? By having healthy parents who love each other, who have a deeply connected relationship with you and who you model after. That's really where you learn it. So our kids aren't learning it, right? But the idea is that you have to have a good radar for when girls are not well, when they might be paranoid, persecuted, versus a girl who's balanced and healthy and is not afraid of both her masculine and feminine parts, but is not afraid of her feminine parts. I'm going to say that. So you have to, if you want to teach your son something, it's choose emotionally healthy girls.
This is pure gold. Choose emotionally healthy girls. Sounds great, right? But in modern dating, that's like telling someone to just breathe clean air. Where exactly? We're living in emotional smog. Let's keep it real. Emotional health in the dating pool today, it's the exception, not the norm. Especially when we're talking about girls raised in a culture that says feelings are facts labels accountability as misogyny, and normalizes mood swings as personality. Oh, and let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Women are on antidepressants in record numbers. That's not an insult, that's data. So what does emotionally healthy even look like in this environment? And more importantly, how is a 17-year-old boy supposed to figure that out on a first date at the mall? So when this psychoanalyst says, choose emotionally healthy girls, we're not disagreeing. We're saying that advice needs translation, because this generation of boys, they're growing up in a world that blurs the line between trauma and identity. And that's where you come in as a father, not to control your son, but to equip him, to show him what emotional health actually looks like, feels like, and sounds like. Because in a world that hands boys a blindfold and a dating app and says, figure it out, the smartest thing a father can do is hand his son a lens of discernment.
So if I am watching this and I don't have good role models, but I know that I want to improve myself, and I found this show and I'm like, I'm going to listen to this and let me see if I can get how do I start to help myself develop that skill when it hasn't been modeled by my parents and I don't have good role models out there on the screens?
So our society is so extreme in the conversation. So to tell your son or for yourself to listen to this and say, I'm going to make the first move. Now, making the first move might be asking a woman out to dinner or kissing her, which is not and is not rape. Forcing yourself on her. So, we don't understand nuance anymore. There's no nuance. And I think that's part of it, is that, a girl can say, oh, he raped me when he tried to kiss her and hug her. And it's possible. But that has to be a very unhealthy girl. So again, I go back to the idea, you have to be able to determine who is healthy and who isn't healthy. And you do that by not partaking of the hookup culture. So one thing that's happened to society, to Gen Zs, and also everyone that's followed, is the hookup culture. And now it's not to say in the 80s, we didn't have some form of the hookup culture, right? I mean, it's not that people weren't sleeping around. It was the AIDS crisis. It was heterosexual. It was gay. It was everything, right? But it's gotten much worse because there's no relationship at all. So, in the 80s, it was a bad thing.
There's situationships now where there's sex, but there isn't, like, we're actually in a relationship. It's like, well, there's some...
Tinder's headline, is meet the love of your night. So,
Great.
Yeah. So basically, it's a culture that diminishes, again, relationships. So the way you don't get accused of rape by a woman is you get to know the woman. You make sure the woman is healthy. You go out to dinner with her. You befriend her. You make sure she's mentally healthy before you make advances, right? And so maybe you have to do that even more now than ever before. But that's not the culture. The culture is just hookups.
Once again, culture, this emotional dysfunction, it's not just individual, it's systemic. We talked about this during the Shannon Sharp situation, how the divorce hustle became the assault hustle because marriage is dead, but the bag still needs securing. Let's break this down. Back in the day, women leveraged sex to secure a commitment. Marriage, resources, protection. Now, they're giving it up for nothing. So what happens? The value of punani hits rock bottom, but somehow the price skyrockets. And when that doesn't work, they move to the next hustle. False allegations, not for justice, but for settlements. No jail, no truth, just a payout. So ask yourself, who do you think men are gonna listen to now? CNN? TikTok therapists? Nah, they're gonna listen to each other, to the people who keep it real, who offer insight and protection.
And it's interesting because they call dating, what we used to call dating, was just going out to dinner with someone and getting to know them and see if you wanted to kiss them, right? That's not what the young people do. They find each other on Tinder, they go out and they sleep together. And there's no relationship building. And so it encourages mistakes. It encourages accidental experiences that are really negative. You have to know somebody to determine whether they're healthy enough to sleep with, or whether you like them enough to sleep with them. So the hookup culture is an extension of this disconnection in society. And the kids are suffering from it because they're more likely to make mistakes and be accused of things if they don't know the person they're sleeping with.
This is why fathers matter, because when you're young, you don't have filters. You confuse chaos with passion. You think she's just misunderstood, when really you're dating a walking tornado. As a father, it's your job to teach your son what stability actually looks like, what red flags aren't just quirks, but warnings, that emotional safety is more valuable than being hot and unpredictable. Because here's the truth, one misstep can ruin your life. One false allegation can destroy everything you're building. Back in the day, the jungle had tigers and snakes. Now, the concrete jungle has clout chasers and chaos queens. You gotta teach your son how to navigate this jungle.
One of the things that seems like it's harder is, so you're saying something that makes some assumptions, which is healthy. So what does that mean? Like, paint a picture. I know there's not one, there's billions, but what are some markers of a healthy psychology, of a healthy personality or maybe it might be easier to say what are some warning signs that it's not healthy, but give me and the viewer some tangible like traits or behaviors or things that I should be looking for and not ignoring. Because sometimes we see these things and we kind of know it's wrong, but we ignore it because we like them, and then turns out like, wow, I should have listened to my gut. But our guts have gotten a little out of whack. So help me out.
So adolescents' prefrontal cortex is not developed till they're 25. That's the part of their brain that we call the emotional regulation part of their brain. So all adolescents are a little wacky in terms of their judgment and their executive functioning and all kinds of things. Their impulsivity, this is part of being an adolescent and a young adult. But healthy, basically, if I were to be reductionistic, it means being emotionally balanced, being able to regulate your emotions. So, if you are a boy and you take a girl out and you make the advance and you kiss her, and then she flips out and she gets enraged at you and she screams at you and she says, who are you to kiss me? And you just harassed me, Right. Houston, we have a problem because this is someone who is not emotionally regulated, right? Maybe an emotionally regulated girl would say, I don't really want that. I'm not attracted to you in that way. I'd prefer just to be friends, right? So you can see someone that goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. They either have a borderline personality, they have a narcissistic personality, maybe they're highly anxious, but, emotional balance, that's what I would say, the ability to regulate one's emotions.
Fellas, use your gut. You've dated crazy before.
You lied.
Not everything that isn't true is a lie, Liam.
Those red flags were all there during the honeymoon phase, but you ignored them. Why? Because you fell in love with the idea of her, not the reality of her. Then the reality hit, and now you're here looking for answers. Truth is, you don't want a project. You want a teammate. You want a woman who's already done the work, not someone who expects you to fix her. And in this fast-changing environment, you can't give your son the same dating advice that worked in 1989 because it won't work now.
That's right. Because again, incel territory is limbo. It's purgatory. It's neither here nor there. That's really what it is. You're not a girl, but you don't feel like a boy. I mean, people that listen to this are going to get upset with that, but that is the truth. Because we're not allowing boys to be boys, not awful boys, not toxic masculinity, just protective, aggressive, taking initiative, allowing boys to be masculine and not punishing them for it. So they're feeling they can't go there, but they're not really girls. So they're stuck in their rooms in purgatory.
Masculinity is under attack, and it starts with the boys. These boys, they're coming to this space in droves. So as content creators, as fathers, as men, we have a responsibility, especially if you rep the manosphere. Because guess what? Mainstream media is coming after this space. They're painting all of us with the same brush, calling us toxic, incel, dangerous. Smear campaign is in full effect. So when you speak, when you post, when you share, just remember, the boys are watching. So give them truth, give them clarity, and give them the tools to thrive, not just survive.
Manosphere, we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.